Hello and welcome to It's a Code You, mental health support for those working in healthcare. This is a podcast created for healthcare employees to explore not only issues relating to mental and emotional health, but also unique challenges that those working in healthcare are faced with. Your hosts are Adina Tucker, a licensed clinical social worker with Dartmouth Health, and Jennifer Hinsey, an MSW also with Dartmouth Health. Welcome to It's a Code You. And in staying with our topic of mindfulness for January and February, we are going to talk about self-compassion today. And self-compassion is something that can help you to increase your feelings of self-worth, raise your self-esteem, and just allow you to move through conflict and adversity with a gentler nature towards yourself. So we'll define what it is. We'll talk about more of the benefits, and then we'll just give you some action steps that will help you to start putting some self compassion practices into place into your everyday life.
First, we'll start off talking about self-compassion by discussing Dr. Kristen Neff. She is one of the leading researchers on self-compassion, and she's an associate professor of educational psychology, and she has been researching this topic of self-compassion for many, many years. She says self-compassion is simply the process of turning compassion inward. We're kind and understanding rather than harshly self-critical when we fail, make mistakes, etc. There's also a clinical psychologist named Tara Brach, and she has rooted her practice in the followings of Buddhism. And in Buddhist teachings, self-compassion is talked about as a quivering of the heart in response to suffering. She says compassion awakens as we allow ourselves to be touched by our shared vulnerability or that of another. It's the medicine we most need to bring healing to our world. What we say to ourselves really does matter. Negative self-talk, it can increase depression, anxiety symptoms, and it can also impact our self-worth. Now, Tara Brach, who we just mentioned, has a lot of mindfulness practice information on her website, including some courses on how to integrate mindfulness into your daily work, which I'm sure will have some great links at the bottom that you can check out. And now, I believe Adina is going to give us some more information on Dr. Kristen Neff.
Yeah, so according to Kristen Neff, there are three components of self compassion. So the first component is self kindness versus self judgment. And the idea is that those who are self compassionate are more gentle with themselves when there are painful experiences, because life doesn't always work out how we want. We don't always get the expectations that we have met. And part of it is also accepting the reality rather than fighting against what you'd rather the outcome be. So, a little bit of that radical acceptance that we've talked about before, but also having sympathy and kindness rather than being self critical. And the second component that she talks about of self compassion is common humanity versus isolation. So, sometimes when we become frustrated that we don't get what we want or situations turn out poorly, we can get into this thinking of this only happens to me. I'm the only one that these things happen to over and over again. When the reality is everyone goes through things. So this concept is essentially saying not get over it, everybody has hard times, but rather that suffering and having imperfections is just part of being human and it's a shared part of the human experience. So it's more of a concept to make you feel less alone instead of feeling isolated in these bad things are happening to me, which I think can be a really important thing when you are feeling like it's like one thing after the other, and you're having a hard time. The last component of self compassion is mindfulness versus over identification. So, this concept is saying that being self compassionate doesn't mean you're ignoring your negative feelings or that the negative thoughts you have, you are incorporating mindfulness. And we've talked about that a little bit so we can review. what that would mean, which is the mindfulness means that you are observing your thoughts and feelings that come up. You're not trying to shove them down or ignore them. You're just allowing yourself to experience them and acknowledging that they're there. But you're also giving yourself that kind of gentle compassion that I may have a negative feeling about how I handled something or that I made a mistake, but everyone makes mistakes and it's okay. And I'm okay. And I'm doing the best I can. And that's really all I can ask of myself. And I feel like this is the way I kind of describe it to clients because I feel like I've had clients do a lot of self compassion work these last few months. But it's kind of like if you're feeling down on yourself about a situation or the way you handled something, think about if a very close friend of yours, your best friend, came to you with that same situation. Would you say the words you're saying to yourself to that person? Probably not. Like you'd probably be more understanding, more compassionate. And so if we can be that way to others, then why can't we be that way to ourselves? And what damage does it do to us when we aren't compassionate with ourselves?
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And I think that's a really great, realistic way, a practical way for folks to try to practice self compassion. Because I think we all have been there, right? Where we are a harsh critic towards ourselves. And yet we would never dream of shaming a friend, right? A close friend or somebody we cared about if they made the same mistake or were in the same situation. So it's a good reminder to be gentle. I would like to talk about something called fierce compassion. And this is another concept brought to us by Dr. Kristen Neff. It's a little bit different than self compassion on its own, right? Self compassion is nurturing, being gentle with ourselves. But Dr. Neff also talks about, right, this idea of the fierce self compassion, which she describes as acting in the world. So it's more figuring out what you need and advocating for yourself, setting boundaries, protecting your time and space. So we can think of fierce compassion as our self compassion in action. In practice, this might look like saying no to someone, right? Maybe you need to say no because you need to give yourself that time instead. But it's also about not making yourself feel guilty because you had to say no, allowing yourself to give you what you need and being okay with it. Now, Tara Brock, who we mentioned earlier, she talks about a particular concept of self compassion that she has the acronym RAIN, RAIN. And this is a tool for practicing mindfulness and compassion. R stands for recognize what is going on. What is happening in this moment? What's the situation? A stands for allow, as in allow the experience to be there, just as it is. The I stands for investigate. We're going to investigate with interest and care. And N stands for nurture with self compassion.
Let's also talk about what the research says about practicing self compassion. We'll just briefly talk about some of the benefits that self compassion can give you. So, practicing self compassion can give you a feeling of happiness, being more optimistic, and being satisfied with life, having a stable and unconditional sense of self worth, being appreciative of and also satisfied with their bodies or with your body. It'll also help you demonstrate higher levels of emotional intelligence, be more forgiving and compassionate towards others. It will help you to be stronger and more resilient when you're faced with hardship and to be more conscientious and take personal responsibility more. It can help you focus on learning and personal growth. It can help you cope with work challenges and feeling more competent and also more effective at your job. Can help you with maintaining a healthy work life balance, in being able to draw healthier boundaries and say no to people. It'll help you to feel more authentic and connected and experience intimacy in relationships with others. It helps to make compromise solutions in conflict situations, and it can help with your sleep as well.
There are just so many benefits to practicing self compassion, it sounds like. And you know what's also wonderful about that is it's something we all are able to do. I think just as Adina's done a wonderful job talking about all the benefits of practicing self compassion, I think it's also helpful to understand what research shows can happen if we have a lack of self compassion. A lack of self compassion can lead to things like increased negative emotions, and that may show up in the form of anxiety, depression, and stress. Can also cause us to have some increased difficulty in dealing with setbacks or mistakes we've made. It can hinder our personal growth, and it can have a negative impact on relationships due to the self criticism and a tendency to be harsher on ourselves when we're facing difficult situations. So, truly, having a lack of self compassion can cause us some real difficulties in our life, personally and extending outward to others. Now, if you're wondering, oh no, do I have enough self compassion in my life? Or do I have a lack of self compassion? Well, one helpful tool is Kristen Neff's self compassion scale, and that can be used for researchers and clinicians. But on her website, it's featured, and it's also going to be in our show notes. But there's also a quiz that you can take to see how you rank on giving yourself compassion. And while, this isn't any sort of clinical diagnosis, it can be really helpful in giving you insight on where you might want to make some changes. Maybe there's room in your life to increase a little self compassion here and there. Now, we've talked about the idea of self compassion and how the lack of it can negatively affect us, but how do we even start to practice it? What are the real actionable ways to practice self compassion so that you too can start to be gentler with yourself and create a life filled with more self worth and self love? Well, we are going to talk about that next.
Okay. So, one thing you can do is to give your body comfort. So, eat something that's good for you, take a nap, massage your hands or feet, taking a nice walk, and just doing something to improve how you physically feel. Another one is to write a letter to yourself. And I use this one a lot with my clients. So, if you think of a difficult situation or one where you're feeling particularly down on yourself, write yourself a letter as if you were writing it to your best friend or someone you love going through the exact same thing. Notice a difference in how you would speak to a loved one versus the things you might say to yourself, and try to treat yourself as a valued loved one, the way you would treat someone that you really care about. And that can be difficult to do, especially if you tend to go into kind of a negative self-talk, shame spiral type of thing. But the more you practice doing it, the easier it gets, and it really can be very helpful. You can also be very encouraging to yourself. So, if a friend is going through something, think of how you would encourage them. What would you say? And then get in the practice of being encouraging to yourself in that same way, saying those same type things to yourself. I'm also a fan of sticky notes. So, especially if it's like an ongoing thing you're struggling with, like putting like a sticky note in front of like, your workspace or on your mirror or something just
Yeah.
to kind of drive that home. Similar to a letter, you can also keep a self compassion journal where you reflect on the things that happened during your day, but you do it
Yeah.
kind of from the point of view of self compassion. Maybe you were running late or whatever it is, or just really kind of journaling every day, but from that lens of being self compassionate to yourself.
Those are some great tips and, right, pretty practical ways that folks can get into practicing self compassion. Now, you might be asking yourself, well, those all sound like great ideas, but I'm still maybe a little on the fence about really beginning my own self compassion practice, or maybe you're just having self doubts about being able to stick with it consistently. Well, fortunately, Dr. Duff also has some tips for getting into the habit of doing these self compassion practices and making it something consistent that you too can continue to incorporate into your life and enjoy the benefits of it. So, one is, of course, the more you do it, the more effect that it's going to have. And just like forming any habit or skill, practice increases proficiency. So, a little bit counts. So, if you can do a little bit every day, even, that's going to add up and it matters. Another tip is that the goal, it's not to suppress any negative feelings about whatever situation you're going through. The goal is to approach with kindness. So you don't have to have only positive feelings, right? That's not even very realistic. But you can approach yourself with acceptance and understanding about the situation and understanding towards your negative feelings. And the last tip is that if you notice that painful feelings increase once you start practicing self compassion, don't give up. It's similar to when you start really digging in during therapy, tackling the hard things. Things may get uncomfortable, or you may have more painful things come up as a result. But if you keep on the path, things will improve. And eventually, you'll probably start feeling a lot better. So don't give up if this happens to you too.
Yeah, I'll just say that I really do think that um there is a huge, or at least what I'm seeing is there's a huge tie between lack of self-compassion and maybe like a diminished self-worth. And I feel like especially anxiety. I feel like I see the biggest difference in my folks that are struggling with anxiety when they really start to like focus in on self-compassion and being gentler with themselves. I think it's worth giving it a shot if you haven't ever done anything like that before.
Oh, this was a lot of good info here. So good. Very informative one.
Okay, so today we've gone over a mindfulness practice, self compassion, and talked about how you can benefit from it as well as ways you can actually do it. Kristen Neff and Tara Brock also have some guided exercises on their websites, and I'll link all of those in the show notes in case anyone is interested in trying those out. If you haven't already, please subscribe. And if you like what you hear, please consider giving us a rating and review on your favorite listening platform. If you have any questions, feedback, or if there's a topic you'd like us to cover, please email us at dhbhs.media@hitchcock.org. And we appreciate you listening and we hope you have a wonderful day.